Just days earlier, the top brass of the Election Commission of India signed documents that concluded the largest democratic election in the world. These officials made it possible for over 830 million Indian voters to exercise their democratic right. That's more than the entire populations of Europe, South and Central America and Australia combined.
This is one thing which unites the entire country.
Spread across 9 phases and 4 months, this has been the longest election in Indian history. The Election Commission has collected and trained a gigantic workforce that has beaten the odds. A workforce that has reached out to the remotest corners of India. They have battled disruptive forces, no matter what the risk.
For a democracy, money power can disturb the level playing field.
The rest of the world has watched on amazed.
India can teach the world an awful lot about how elections should be run, about how democracy should actually happen on the ground.
But how did India pull off the world's biggest election? New Delhi. Not far away from the seat of India's electoral democracy is an organization that is working overtime. Across its offices around the country, the Election Commission of India is racing against the clock.
This time, a request for a few additional polling stations.
They have a deadline that's non-negotiable.
In the Indian Constitution, the responsibility and role for timely conduct of elections is given to the autonomous body, that is the Election Commission.
The law of the land states that no government can last even a day beyond its maximum term of 5 years.
As per the spirit of law, as per the spirit of democracy, new house must be in place before expiry of the existing house.
The Election Commission of India has only 6 months to organize the biggest man-managed event in human history.
It is almost a logistical nightmare.
The Election Commission has to deal with 28 states and 7 union territories, spread over more than 3 million square kilometers. A country of close to 1.3 billion people who speak 22 official languages and over 1,600 dialects. To complicate things further, there are extremes of climate, freezing cold, scorching heat, and intense rain. And if that wasn't challenging enough, almost a quarter of India remains illiterate. Each region presents its own unique challenge. The National Capital Region of Delhi has over 25 million residents, jostling for space and the right to vote. Since India's independence, Delhi has become one of the most populous cities on the planet. The land of the high passes is larger. And there's no jostling for space. 270,000 people live here in over 85,000 square kilometers. Ladakh remains inaccessible for most of the year. That's a lot of difficult ground to cover in an election plan. The holy city, Varanasi, is more than accessible. It is at the heart of India's most densely populated state. In this election, it is in the glare of media attention, being the site for a crucial parliamentary contest. A heated battle is in the offing, and the Election Commission must be prepared. Passions and expenses will run high in the southern city of Chennai. candidates in the south of India spend the most on their campaigns. The Commission will need to keep an eye on these expenses, both legal and illegal. For the Election Commission staff, the groundwork is ongoing. They must be prepared for elections even at short notice. This starts with the basics, identifying who among India's 1.2 billion people is eligible to vote. The only way to do that is to meet voters face to face. In Varanasi, these election officers are going from house to house. New people migrate into densely populated towns constantly, and the population numbers keep changing. Electoral lists need to be updated regularly.
जो जनवरी 2014 से 18 साल के हो गए, आप उनका फॉर्म भरवा लीजिए.
Migration acquires a different meaning in Ladakh. Segments of the population still live nomadic pastoral lives here, moving across vast areas from season to season. For election officers, this makes the logistics of a face-to-face meeting daunting. There are no narrow lanes here, nor house-to-house inquiries. A meeting with the electorate entails getting to remote locations over some seriously rough terrain. A journey like this has its share of roadblocks. Their passage takes these election officers over the highest motorable roads in the world. After many hours of tough driving, they come to the very edge of India. Their destination, a remote village on the banks of the Pangong Lake, close to the China border. Their mission, to bring democracy to this remote outpost of India. In places like these, seasonally inhabited by nomads, far away from the internet, the role of a booth-level election officer is crucial. Over the years, these officers come to know these locals, their migration patterns and personal details. Their photos and data are verified and updated regularly. It's a tedious process and painstaking. The villagers know the importance of a voter ID. Now they too can play a role in making India a successful democracy. Information pours in from every corner of the country, and the voter database collects in the servers of the Election Commission. Over the years, the number of eligible voters in India has been steadily rising. Since the last general election, the number has risen by over 100 million, taking the count to a mammoth 834 million. Of these, about 150 million are first-time voters. So the question is, how do you get all these people to actually vote? Today, the Election Commission not only plays facilitator and umpire, but also leads the drive to motivate voters.
Motivation was a big issue. Urban apathy, youth apathy, we had to deal with. Some places, women, for example, would take it as not being a natural job for them to go out to vote. But we worked on all that. We worked through a lot of interpersonal communication, cultural ambassadors, youth volunteers, field-level workers, team leaders from within the community.
To that end, the Commission ropes in some of India's most popular celebrities. Even though it's serious business, a little humour goes a long way.
लड़कियों का तो बेचारियों का और भी खर्चा होता है वोट वाले दिन, क्योंकि वो मैनिक्योर करवा के जाती हैं बकायदा. उन्हें फोटो खिंचवा के फेसबुक पे भी डालनी होती है ना, वो वोट फॉर इंडिया.
In cities like Mumbai and New Delhi, the young urban electorate has traditionally not been the most enthusiastic. Mr. Votu, the Election Commission's new mascot, is determined to change this attitude. In smaller cities, the drive is equally vigorous. The tactics differ. A street play troupe announces its arrival in Varanasi. They make their way through the weavers' quarters of the old city. They create a tamasha to attract attention in these mohallas, or neighborhoods. Among these weavers are young people for whom voting will be a first-time experience. Work is forgotten for the moment. Out they come to join the party.
I think a momentum has been created which now cannot stop. I hope that in the coming elections, for example, we'll have larger and larger turnout. We are going to take it forward till the time we are 100% sure that everyone who is eligible is on our electoral roll, and everyone who is on electoral roll should come voluntarily and vote.
Across the country, the languages may be different, but the message is the same. Booth-level officers talk to shy Ladakhi women. Choir groups from the northeast sing out the importance of voting. Vintage car and motorcycle rallies, dancers and musicians, celebrities, street play artists, and mascots, they all reach out to the Indian voter. The greatest democratic exercise in the world is about to begin.
Jai Hind.
The countdown to the Indian general elections begins with a mammoth mobilization of manpower. Officers of the Election Commission of India take to the streets, first identifying the 834 million strong electorate and then motivating them to vote. It is the biggest democratic exercise ever attempted in human history. Elections began in India as the Great Experiment, when India first chose to be a democracy. When India won her freedom, many believed that the country would be unable to handle the pressures of democracy and would disintegrate. But the founding fathers who drafted India's constitution in January 1950 chose an admirable ideal: universal adult suffrage. It meant that every adult in India would have the right to vote, irrespective of gender, caste or social background. It was a brave choice. At the same time, in the United States, African Americans weren't allowed to vote. Some European countries didn't allow women either. India is a federal democracy. This means it has governments at the national level and state level. In a state election, voters elect political representatives to the Legislative Assembly to form the state government. The national or central government is formed in Parliament. Parliament has two houses, Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. India is divided into constituencies on the basis of population. In a general election, voters elect one representative of each constituency to the Lok Sabha. The political party or coalition winning the most votes forms the central government. The Prime Minister heads the government. All elections are conducted by the Election Commission of India. The Election Commission took India to the Lok Sabha polls for the first time in October 1951. Back then, over 80% of Indians were unable to read and write. The solution was simple. The Election Commission created pictorial symbols for candidates so the unlettered could easily identify who they wanted to vote for. The images were drawn from daily Indian life, and thus a great many images have become icons of Indian politics. The lotus, the hand, the bicycle, an elephant, and even a broom. The more unusual ones include a frock, a lady purse and the toothbrush. Last heard, there was no one queuing up for these. There is a bank of other symbols still available. In the early days, polling was very basic. Voters were given a choice of ballot boxes, each with a different candidate symbol. The voter looked for the box with his or her candidate symbol and put a piece of paper into it. When voting ended, the pieces of paper in each box were counted, and whoever got the most won. The first Indian to cast his vote was Shyam Saran Negi in village Kalpa in Himachal Pradesh. His vote, like so many others, was locked into a metal ballot box that made its way across the Himalayas to be counted. 2 million of these boxes, made from 8,200 tons of steel, were used in India's first general election, where India chose its first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. In New Delhi, men and women collect at election training centres. They are here to help facilitate the world's biggest election. They begin these sessions, quite appropriately, with an oath.
To have a massive operation, which many call the largest event of the world, we need people. And these are all temporarily brought on deputation to the Election Commission of India. And their contribution to the reinforcement of Indian democracy through the mechanism of elections is something to be saluted.
हम लोग इलेक्शन कराने के लिए जा रहे हैं, अच्छे तरीके से कराएंगे और वहाँ पर
Among them are school teachers, bank managers, bureaucrats, college professors and technocrats. They learn about the material and equipment that they will use a few days later. The star of the show is the EVM, or electronic voting machine. First used in the 1980s, it has revolutionized voting in India. The current model consists of 2 gadgets. The ballot unit is used to cast votes, and the control unit records and tallies that information. The EVM is both mechanically and electronically protected to prevent tampering. The software used is burnt onto a one-time programmable chip that cannot be altered. Most importantly, the device cannot be networked by wire or wirelessly with any other machine, making data corruption or hacking virtually impossible. The training staff are not the only ones interested in the EVMs. A group from the United Nations Development Programme is here to witness how India conducts its polls. On the team are election officers from different countries.
The EVMs, the electronic voting machines, that's been a big winner. Everyone's wanted to see them, find out how they work. Out of the 21 countries that have come, at least half of them want to go back to their own election commissions and discuss perhaps adopting this form of technology.
A key part of the training is mastering the functions of the EVM. Practice makes perfect.
ये आप जो पूछ रहे हैं ना, इनको practically करके देखिए, तभी आपको confidence आएगा, नहीं तो वहाँ भूल जाओगे.
But that's not all. Educational videos are shown. Oral and written exams follow. In all, 11 million government workers join hands to conduct the world's biggest election. The stage is set. There are only a few days to go for the world's biggest election. Political candidates amp up the hype. Campaigning is intense. Across the country, 8,748 candidates, seasoned politicos from over 1,600 political parties, first-timers and independents all make their pitch to a total electorate of 834 million Indians.
हमने आपको 70,000 करोड़ रुपए वापस दिए. आपका पैसा है. वहाँ तो अंदर
It's quite a crowd, vying for only 543 parliamentary seats. Varanasi is seen to be a crucial seat this election. The Election Commission knows that this overcharged atmosphere could lead to tension. They are taking no chances. In a record deployment, security forces descend on the city.
Police deployment at the all India level is absolutely massive. Logistically, it's a big issue. The force has to move from, let's say, Kashmir to Kanyakumari. All bogies of a train or special trains are requisitioned for their movement.
Over 570 special trains are run, and over 1 million police and paramilitary forces are mobilized for election duty.
They come from all districts, like the CRPF, the BSF, the ITBP, the CISF. And once they come for a central briefing or briefing at a particular place, and since police forces have different uniform, so you'll see it's really a big kind of an assembly of the police forces from all across the country.
The pressure is building up. Over the next few days, security personnel must do all they can to keep the election process free and fair. It won't be easy. Out on the streets, emotions are turbocharged. Politicians, party workers, security forces, the media and the people of India come together in this incredible dance of democracy. But the police are not the only ones keeping an eye on events. The Election Commission needs to make sure that candidates adhere to a model code of conduct and keep within specified monetary guidelines.
There are few states where the use of money power and bribing is rampant. Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. For a democracy, the money power can disturb the level playing field. It has very pernicious effects on the democracy. It not only creates bias in the mind of the voters, but subsequently after the election, the elected members are under campaign debt to some business house or to some people from whom they have incurred the excess election expenditure.
To monitor campaigning, the Election Commission places over 21,000 video surveillance teams across the country. These teams record campaign events, including speeches made by candidates. A close watch is kept on the content of these speeches, whether the campaigner is being defamatory about a rival or even making hate speeches against other communities or religions. Video footage of these surveillance activities is carried back to analysts who determine whether things are going according to plan or not. Given this current scenario, the Commission is even more vigilant.
The major loophole in our system is that though there is a ceiling for the candidate that they should not spend more than 70 lakhs, there is no ceiling on campaign expenditure of the political parties. A party can spend any amount. So this is the major challenge, how we have to control the use of money power during the election.
Audit teams convene regularly and crunch numbers to determine how much the candidate or the political party is spending.
Our video will capture in a day-to-day basis, say you have purchased 1,000, but our video shows that there is 1,100. So the 100 we need to have explained. That's all.
During the election process, the candidates are asked to maintain day-to-day accounts of election expenditures. In a prescribed register, they are asked to produce these registers 3 times during the election process before an impartial officer deputed from outside the state. So now Commission has the power to disqualify a candidate if he doesn't show the accounts in true and correct manner.
Another challenge for monitoring the model code of conduct is a growing nexus between some political candidates and some members of the media. The act of featuring favorable reports about particular candidates in the media in lieu of payment is called paid news. It is a growing menace during election campaigns. Close to 5,000 teams across India run control rooms 24 hours a day to ensure that the media and political nexus can be controlled as much as possible. Nightfall brings no rest for the Election Commission or the police forces.
Ours is a cash economy. A fellow can carry 10 million cash and get away with this because cash transactions are not banned under any law in India. Cash transactions do not leave any trail. People use money to buy votes, to bribe the candidates, to bribe the voters.
Miscreants try every trick in the book to smuggle cash past checkposts. Not all are successful. In a famous incident, a large amount of cash was hidden under the hood of a car. The heat of the engine set the cash on fire and burned through the metal of the car hood.
We found that they probably tried to take out the cash and they found half of the notes were burnt. So they threw some of the half-burnt notes there and they left.
To fight these election malpractices, over 11,000 flying squads manned by 66,000 people across the country fan out, searching for signs of trouble. As poll day draws closer, the chances for voter bribery increases. In sensitive areas, the Commission and police forces have to maintain a non-stop vigil. It's a potentially dangerous business. A team in Chennai have suddenly got a tip-off. They have heard that a couple of miscreants have hidden a large amount of cash in a motorcycle. Cash intended to bribe voters. The bikers are suddenly joined by a larger gang of accomplices. Things begin to look dangerous as the two sides face off. Across the country, election authorities seized 3,130 million rupees in raids and 22.5 million litres of liquor, enough to fill 83 swimming pools. The Election Commission and police forces must battle with this relentless pressure till poll day arrives. It's another day in the run-up to the Indian general elections. Security forces are on full alert. The situation has now entered a new phase. 2 days prior to poll day, the Election Commission calls a halt on any campaigning activity. A relative hush falls across the regions in India that are going to the polls. The stage is now set for the world's biggest election. In the Ladakh region, a group of election officers stand by. They are about to begin an incredible journey.
conduct of elections is one task in which we cannot exclude any voter. In case there is a voter who stays in a remote locality and we cannot reach out to him, the Commission has ensured that we reach out to him either through treks or through heli sorties, but we must have a polling station at his place of polling.
The officers carry a vital cargo. They are taking essential election material to one of the most remote villages of India.
In an area like this, without the help of the Air Force, possibly every person out there won't be able to vote. These places that we are going to, for 6-7 months, they are absolutely cut off. And in the period that they are connected, there are foot tracks which take about 4-5 days of minimum to the nearest roadhead. This is the most difficult area to operate for helicopters in the entire world. In terms of altitude, the aircrafts are at their absolutely edge of their performance levels. And many of these valleys are so narrow that except for this Cheetah class of aircraft, nothing can enter into those valleys. There are places we are going to during this deployment of the election team where the population may be not even 100. But these are Indians who are completely cut off from the mainstream, and it's extremely important that he casts his vote, even if it is in tens and ones. It's a marvelous feeling that you have empowered virtually everyone.
The chopper ride over high peaks is only the beginning of the adventure. As if the dangerous flight wasn't enough, they get airborne once again. This time their flying machine is considerably low tech.
In urban areas, in city areas, fine. There is no great hardship involved. But there are cases where staff have to leave from their homes 3 days or 4 days before the date of the poll.
Their destination lies at the far end of the valley. These men have flown across the Himalayas and trekked for days to bring elections to a village with only 30 eligible voters. Many incredible journeys are undertaken across inaccessible parts of India. Often perilous, through insurgent hotspots, and sometimes with human fatalities. Every such journey has one mission: to give eligible Indian voters the chance to exercise their fundamental democratic right. For the polling party in Ladakh, finding their destination is only the first challenge. Finding a suitable place for the polling booth is the next. As far as possible, poll booths must be set up in a government building, a classroom in a government school, or a community hall, for instance. Signage identifies the location for voters.
First class 169Q Nemo polling station.
It's a rough and ready location. But the simple arrangements will do fine for the job at hand. The poll officers have brought everything needed in their backpacks. All they have to do is set it up. At center stage is the compartment for the EVM. Here the voter has privacy while casting a vote by secret ballot. It's a no-frills affair. A battery-operated torch and a cardboard sheet complete the arrangements. It's the night before election day in Delhi. Poll personnel open the strong room. Inside EVMs for West Delhi's polling booths lie ready for distribution in random order. It's only at the last minute that polling officers get to know which machine is being allocated to which polling booth. In the early hours of poll day, a mock poll is held. Each EVM is checked in the presence of political candidates or their representatives and election commission officials. Once satisfied that the EVMs are working fine, candidates seal their signatures within the machine. It is now checked and ready for action. At the heart of the world's biggest election is the Indian voter. It is the voters' faith in the electoral process that is the very foundation of India's democratic system. As has been for 15 Lok Sabha elections before this one, the Indian voter treats the act of voting as a fundamental right and not just a duty.
Festivals in every region in India. Ganesh Chaturthi is celebrated in Maharashtra and it remains confined in a large manner to Maharashtra. There is a festival called Baisakhi which is in North India and it remains confined to North India. But here is a festival, the Great Indian Elections, which the entire country celebrates, right from Ladakh to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to Manipur. The dates can be different, but this is one thing which unites the entire country.
They come from different parts of India, from different backgrounds. For some, this day begins with an invocation to the gods. It is, after all, a day which may decide their future. For close to 150 million people, voting is a first-time experience. It is their moment to have a direct say in a world that often seems to forget them. They go down Himalayan slopes, ancient lanes, and busy city streets. Their destination, wherever they are, is the same. They queue up at poll booths with their fellow countrymen, shoulder to shoulder, within India's staggering diversity. This is a stunning unity of purpose. The polling system is as simple as it is quick. First, voters identify themselves, then officials verify their names on the electoral rolls and hand out confirmation slips. Next, each voter goes into the poll booth, signs, gets a dab of indelible ink on the index finger as proof of voting. The actual moment of choosing the candidate on the EVM is a fleeting one. A quick press of a button against the candidate's poll sign from behind a screen, and it's done. Today, the inked finger has become an icon. For most, it is a symbol of empowerment and proof of having done their bit for the world's largest democracy. India's electoral process is widely regarded as the gold standard of democratic elections. Witnesses from around the world cannot help but marvel at the sheer scale of it all.
Well, I think it's hugely inspiring. It's the biggest democratic election in mankind's history. That's a wonderful thing, a great privilege to witness. I'm impressed by the efficiency with which the Electoral Commission and everybody associated with the elections is running this election. And I'm struck with the enthusiasm by which almost every Indian wants to come out and register his or her vote. And I think that's a great tribute to India and to the Indian people.
As voters turn out in the hundreds of millions over the 9 phases of the general election, video control rooms monitor their progress across the country. webcams record vital data. It becomes clear that this is the largest voter turnout ever. In more than 90,000 polling booths around India, voters come and go, from early in the morning till closing time on each election day. In the evening, gates close. Voters may have done their job, but there is no rest for those working behind the scenes. Election personnel now collect the EVMs and begin their journey back. They have been on their feet for 36 hours on the go. They are weary, and it shows. But the show must go on. Strong rooms fill up with electronic voting machines once again. This time, these machines hold vital information. The people of India have chosen. The race to declare election results is on. The seals of the strong rooms are broken once again. Inside, the electronic machines bring in the results to the 16th Indian general election. Officials are accompanied by representatives of contesting candidates and the media. From now on, everyone has an eye on every move the EVMs make. Man and machine are labelled. Security is tight. The EVMs are taken to counting halls close by. The counting staff receive the machines in a designated area, cordoned off by metal fences. The entire procedure is open to public view. Media networks, the general public, and political candidates stand by. The United Nations Development Programme team, comprising of election officials from different countries, arrives on the scene. They have followed electoral proceedings across the country. It is the moment of reckoning. The excitement spikes as results begin pouring out of the electronic voting machines. These gadgets help deliver one of the fastest result declarations in the world. Central control rooms in the Election Commission monitor the results as they flood in. Within a short while, it is clear that one single party is sweeping the polls. It's a result the kind India has not seen in decades. As the winners celebrate, visiting foreign election officials reflect upon the experience they have had over the last few weeks.
The numbers say everything about it. You have 350 people who work for the Election Commission of India who are able to leverage 11 million people so that 835 million people vote. India can teach the world an awful lot about how elections should be run, about how democracy should actually happen on the ground.
The data proves that this is a record-breaking election. It was the largest ever voter turnout in human history. 65% of all eligible Indian women cast their ballot. Over 100 million young first-time voters chose to exercise their right. This was undoubtedly the world's biggest election.